My thoughts on Wuthering Waves. Wuwa released with a lot of hype behind it, but even though I was pre-registered, I thought it was going to be another case of Tower of Fantasy. That ended up not being true in the slightest, and I was very happy about it. Finally, an actual competitive in the market. Many thought that it was going to kill the competition. I thought that would not happen. Sure, it might seem similar to Genshin at first glance, but as the saying goes, if my grandma had wheels, she would have been a bike. It's a totally different game. Sure, some players will stop playing one or the other, but overall, the main audience, it's different. Speaking of different, let's talk about something that seems to stay the same in this genre of games. The story and world building. The game is still in its infancy and needs a bit more time for us to explore its deep lore. For now, we still have a lot of questions and not many answers. Sure, we have many lore points to explore, but know basically nothing about other nations, other sentinels, and we don't know who exactly are we. So even though it feels like the lore will be deep, we are only in a shallow lake, at least for now. As for how the story is delivered, the pacing isn't great, but since we can understand the plot from the first couple of lines, we can then skip it to make it for the lack of good pacing. Yes, you can skip quest lines in this game, which is already a plus, though I would prefer to enjoy a good paced and well told story. Speaking of pacing, let's skip to combat, the main focus of the game. The combat is excellent, it feels smooth, responsive, it's hard but not frustrating, it's incredible. One thing I didn't like though was how your attacks feel weak. I'm not talking about numbers here since clearly I haven't farmed much, but the hits themselves feel like feathers. A bit more impact would be appreciated. The dodging is perfect though. Super satisfying. The bosses also look cool and have a great moveset variety. I also love when there is a series of attacks and I spam shift and it looks super cool. Though if timed incorrectly, will get you killed if you are facing a hard boss. On another hard topic, leveling and gearing. I found leveling intuitive. It's basically the same as other gacha games. You need to have certain materials for certain characters, and you need to level what is basically the character skill. As for gearing, I found it a bit confusing at first, but I got used to it. You basically collect these Pokemon-like creatures and use them as sort of an equipment. The one you place in the first slot will give you its effect if conditions are met. Since this is not a guide, I will skip on many details. Basically, you can farm these indefinitely, which is good if you like grindy games. But if you don't have much time to grind, you need to content yourself with subpar echoes. Since RNG is awful, crit rate is super hard to get. Even though in this game attack scales a lot and raw damage builds are probably viable, you will not want to skip on crit stats. And even getting 50% crit rate is hard. What is not hard though is exploration. Exploration in this game is quite simple. Even though its puzzles are pretty straightforward, they are pretty fun, but there is not much variety yet. Of course, from here onward, they will surely implement more puzzle diversity. The world itself, compared to its competition, feels a bit empty and gloomy. I don't mind the gloomy part of it. What I do mind is that, other than having low puzzle variety, they also have low puzzle count. There just aren't many points of attraction on this open world. So I basically have to content myself with killing monsters, which in itself is fun, but we are talking about exploration. One thing they do great though is climbing and moving around in general. You can literally run up a wall, which is pretty cool, and you also have this grappling hook, so you can jump very high to reach objectives more easily. On the topic of jumping, let's jump into talking about events and rewards. This will be quick since we still haven't seen much diversity on the event, but the ones we did already get were pretty fun. even though it's nothing special. As for the rewards, Kuro Games has been very generous with the amount of free pulls it's giving to its players. What's not generous though is the cash shop. It's expensive, and the only thing kinda worth it in there is the battle pass and the monthly pass. Other than that, it's a complete waste of money that could be used for something actually important, like buying food to put on the table. Remember, you cannot eat Astrite. Speaking of Astrite, let's talk about the gacha system. It's not great. Hard PT is 80 instead of 90 like in its competition, but its soft PT only starts 4 pulls earlier. So it basically becomes the same. It's still super low rates with a built-in PT system on its banner, and I do not like it. The weapon banner though is a lot better. It does not have a 50-50, you are always guaranteed the weapon in that banner. You know what you can get with gacha? Characters. So let's talk about those. The models themselves are good, but they suffer a bit from the gloomy aesthetic of the game. Not many popping colors and all that. They all look pretty basic. Yes, they are hot. Yes, they look very good. Yes, the ultimate animations are cool, but they still look a bit basic compared to the other gacha games. As for their toolkits, they are still pretty different from one another and useful overall, but we still don't have many characters, and I'm afraid they will follow other gacha steps on releasing characters just for the sake of doing so, without proper functionality and not fitting into any team. We also don't have many interactions with them other than their story quests. With that, I will give you my ratings. Story and lore, 7 out of 10. I see the potential, but we aren't there yet. The most important part of a great story for me is the beginning, and for this one, it was weak. This is off topic and didn't affect my rating, but the voice acting was also disappointing. Though I gave it an extra 0.5 points for not having an annoying white fairy screaming at you in every quest. Combat, 9.5 out of 10. Though the attacks feel a bit weak, the combat is incredibly satisfying. Leveling and gearing, 7.5 out of 10. Even if grindy, there is no limit on how much you farm for echoes, and because the combat is so good, it becomes a bit more enjoyable. This will vary a lot depending if you like grindy games or not. For some, it's a deal breaker, for others, it's a blessing. Exploration, 7 out of 10. If it wasn't for the easy exploration with all the mobility this game gives you, the score would be a lot lower for me. The world feels somewhat empty compared to the other gacha open world games. Events and rewards, 7 out of 10. We still need to wait a bit longer to see what more events Kuro brings to wuwa. As for the rewards, they are great, but that's only a percentage of the score. Cash shop, 4 out of 10. If it wasn't for the battle pass and monthly pass, it would be a 0 out of 10. Gacha system, 5 out of 10. The pity is too high, the rates are too low. Even though the weapon banner doesn't have a 50-50, it is not recommended to reach there unless the character really needs it. And to be fair, if the character really needs its weapon, it's probably not a good character. Now, for the characters, 8 out of 10. Yes, I did say they look basic, but I didn't say they looked bad. They still have very nice models and personalities, if you know what I mean. As always, I will give 0.25 points extra for every score above 9. The final score runs up to 7.2 out of 10. This might seem like a low score, though I find the game really fun. There isn't anything relevant other than the combat. The story is okay at best, at least for now. The game also just released, so for a game that is lacking a lot of features like housing, wide recipe choices for cooking, puzzle variety, diverse exploration factors, this score is pretty generous. Let me know if you agree or not down in the comments. As always, have fun. Bye bye.